Okay, thanks. Thanks, Aaron. Just one second, I've got that. Okay, things popping up on my screen here. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all well. Looking forward to the long weekend and plenty of time off and parades and Patrick's Day shenanigans. Just before we start, just want to make sure that everybody can hear me and that everybody can see the presentation on their screens. If you just give a thumbs up in the chat box to let us know that I can be heard and seen.
I don't have access to the screen because it don't have Zoom, so I've just dialed on.
Okay, sorry, okay, well, would that be all right if you want to catch up?
That's fine. You listen in, and we can we can grab the recording later on and see the actual slides itself. Then that's fine.
Yeah, that'd be good. Thanks.
Lots of thumbs up here, Dennis. So I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. I forgot the vagaries of Zoom. I'm in as insurance at SCTU. My name is Anya Cody, and you might know my colleague Damien Roster, and also Nikki Burke has been in contact with people setting up with this. So you're very welcome.
Okay, thanks. We will get going. So project management. Every year when I talk about project management in a group, in a class situation, people start telling me, I have no experience in project management. I don't do project management. And my first thing when I go around the room and listen to people telling me that is to then turn around and say, well, you're all wrong. Because everybody's involved in projects. We do it every day of the week. The fun thing I always find about this is we separate what we do in our private lives or what we do in our business lives, and yet we're still doing microcosms of what we do in business. We run our own business. We all have our own business of house, our homes. So everything we do is a project, from deciding on the mortgage to which car we're going to buy, to where we're going to go on holidays, to what we're going to do for the bank holiday weekend. If you've got young children, it becomes like a mobilization of a military battalion trying to organize everything that needs to move. And if that's not a project in itself, I'm sure there are other names we can put on it as well. But it's projects. So what we're just going to do in the next few sessions is just have a little whistle-stop tour through what exactly we can be looking at, what the differences, some of the parameters, some of the things to consider when we're going through and we're looking at any sort of a project, whether it's one for work or whether it's one in a more personal situation. It's all pretty much the same operations, the same process. At the end of today, I'm going to introduce you to an optional extra for you, which doesn't cost anything, and that is a basic project management qualification called Scrum. And I'll talk to you more about that before we get to the end of the session. So let's move forward. So what is a project? It's a puzzle. I love the image here where you're trying to complete a jigsaw puzzle with the image face down. There's a challenge for somebody. It's what my mother would love. She loves jigsaws, and she always gave out to us if we used the lid as a guide. She'd love this one with no picture. So what we have to look at is we have to start by understanding the end. Outside of lecturing, I have my own coaching practice. Career coaching, emotional intelligence, behavioral science, basically. And when we start, when I'm sitting down with a client, the first question I'll ask them is, what do they want? It's the hardest question I ask people. What do you want? Because what I'm asking that person to do is tell me what the end game is. What are we there for? What is it they're looking to achieve? And that's what a project is all about. We're looking for the end. We're looking to start with what the result is going to look like. If you're getting a house built, you have plans drawn up to show what the house will look like at the end of the building project. And if you're building an extension, you'll have an idea. You'll have drawings. If you're planning a holiday, you will have mapped out the logistics, the process. We'll fly out on this day, we'll go there, we'll do this, we'll stay there, and then we'll come back this way. We have an idea of what it's all going to work like, what it's going to look like. And then what we have to do as we go towards that and head to that end game, that what's known in the coaching fraternity as the well-formed outcome, we are moving forward to making sure that all the pieces are in the right place. One of the key things about projects, though, is that we have to put some contingency in there for when things don't go to plan. And it can happen. The longer the project, the further out the project is, the bigger the chance of there's something unforeseen going to happen. I keep thinking back to the third anniversary was last Sunday, the 12th of March. 3 years ago, we were now a week into, or almost a week into, a lockdown. The first lockdown we had, which then went on for nearly 2 years. All sorts of projects got thrown to the wind. All the one biggest curveball that nobody foresaw. There was this thing happened in a place called Wuhan in China that no one ever heard of. Most people didn't hear of. The next thing it crept across here, and we ended up with it. And all the projects that had to change, all the things that were not completed in time. We had to recalibrate. Here in the college, we had to recalibrate everything we did, the way the lectures were delivered. I was in the college on the 12th of March, and it was like the place was being raided. It was people running with boxes of files and just told, go home, we're closing in 20 minutes. And within 2 days, we're online. Projects change. Projects have to have a bit of, we try to make them as well-defined as we can, but things can go wrong. So there's a couple of things we have to think about when we are looking at one of these concepts. And that is, projects are temporary. They're meant to be temporary. Even if it's a couple of years of a process, it's still a temporary project. Every Tuesday I go to Limerick, because I lecture with Griffith College in Limerick as well. And I park, if I get there early enough, I park in the railway station, in the reduced size car park in the railway station in Limerick, because they're extending the railway station at the moment. Huge building process going on there. Has been going on since last May, and there is zero end in sight. They actually don't know when it's going to finish. If you look at all the signs around, it says closed until further notice. The railway station's open, but the actual car park is taken over. It's gone while they're extending. Until further notice, and looking at it the way it's moving, it's going to be another year, maybe a year and a half before they have it up and running. That's still a temporary process. It's not going to be there forever. They will take away the hoardings. They will take away the machines. They will have a working station there at some point. So we know the start time for that was last May, and finish time we don't know yet. They're allowing time for testing and whatever else they need to put in there. It is still temporary. It's also unique. Projects tend to be something different. There's something that we're not doing every day of the week. So again, in the personal side of things, it's planning a holiday. It's getting renovations done. It's buying a house. It's doing something that's not the norm. In a business context, it could be planning a new product. It could be our service. It could be organizing new equipment, hiring new staff. Summer season's coming, so planning for that. Some hotels close over the winter months, and they're in the process of reopening at the moment. So there's a lot of planning. I see a lot of hotels and accommodations looking for staff for the holiday season. So is all this project, can we get the people we need? So it's unique to that time of the year. It's unique to that system. There's also a defined purpose. There's three things we have to have in a project. We have to not make it a permanent process. Permanent process, it becomes part of operations. It's not a project then, it's operations. A project is something that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's important for us in this context. It also has to be very focused. And it's actually one of the places that people, and as we go through these few weeks, particularly at the end of it, we'll start talking about why projects fail. And one of them is purposeful. It's not directive enough. It's not focused enough. It's too vague. If it's vague, if it's not tied down, then I said some projects will have some wiggle room there because things can go wrong, but there's a thing called too much wiggle room as well. We need to be as tight as we can with it, but there are going to be times when things will go wrong. We still need the direction. We still need the well-formed outcome. We still need to know, what are we working towards? What is the end game? So we're going to look at a couple of very simple examples here. The simplest project plan example that we can have is basically called PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act. It comes from quality management arena. And it's basically your simplest project arrangement, and it works. It works in any context. It doesn't have to be quality management. We start by recognizing an opportunity, something we want to change, and we make the plan we're going to change it. That's step one. Find out what is it I want to change here? What is it I'm trying to change here? Then from there, we go into testing it. So we make a change, small steps. You hear people talk of the low-hanging fruit. We hear people, just the baby steps. And we take these small, gradual steps. Well, let's just price this. Let's just look at that. Let's just consider this and see. We can review the results. Are they what we expected? Does it look like this could work? Or are we off the mark completely? It's our go, no go, safety check, our ecology check to say this is working, this is a good idea, or I think we went off on the wrong tangent here. I think we need to go back and start again. And from the check, we can loop back. We can loop back and replan. We can loop back and we can say, okay, that didn't work. So what do we need to change here? Or do we just need to leave it alone? Forget about it. We make decisions along the way. As I say, this is the simplest format. Assuming the check gives us the results that we want. So we've tested it. We've kind of dipped our toe in the water a little bit. And yeah, that looks promising. The results look promising. The checking it, yeah, that's giving us what we're looking for. I think this could be good. Then we act. Then we go and put all the stops out and make it happen. If it doesn't work, we repeat it. So it's a simple, very simple tool, the PDCA. It's not hugely academic. It's not hugely in depth. It doesn't have all sorts of rules and regulations around it. It's quite a flexible process, but it's a great way of just a basic test of a system, of a process, of a plan. Will it work? Is it worth doing? Or do we need to actually stop and start again, or stop and don't do anything about it? I mentioned that projects are temporary and they must be focused and so on. And it's a simple example, simple little way of checking that and managing that. Probably the most important thing I'm going to tell you today is there's 3 aspects within project management that are sacrosanct. And there are 3 areas. If it's going to bring a project down, any one of the 3 of these areas will bring a project down. And that is the 3 constraints. And it's the 3 areas that people get wrong all the time, whether it's in a personal setting or in a commercial setting. It doesn't matter. I've been involved in several commercial projects. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. And the ones that didn't generally fell down because of one of the three of these reasons. And sometimes more than one of the three of these reasons. And it's worth spending a little time just thinking about these three areas. The first one is time. How long will it take to do it? I remember in a past life working for a large manufacturing organization, and I was the most junior person called to a meeting. I was the purchasing manager for the site, and I was called to a meeting where all the big wigs were there. I mean, the car park looked like a showroom for luxury cars. The only thing that was missing was a helicopter, and I said they didn't have it there because they couldn't find a place to land it. It was, you know, you picking a luxury car from Mercedes to BMW to Jaguar, and there was one parked in there, in at least one parked outside in the car park that day. We had everybody in the room was a director of this or the senior managers of that. They were all literally the big guys. And this meeting was to plan the launch project, to plan the launch of new products. And it was called a global launch. First time in the company's history, they were doing a global launch. Now, I'll contextualize that, and that for the company, global meant Ireland and England, but it was still a big deal. And it involved collaboration between a number of the manufacturing sites, finishing up at the one that I was working for. And they were having this big power meeting around the table. I was sitting in the darkest corner I could find to hide myself and wondering why I was there. And they were talking that they were going to launch the product in 3 weeks, and they were going to be on the shelf, and they had told all the retailers they're going to be on the shelf in 3 weeks, and so blah, blah, blah. And there must have been something in the way I reacted to what they were talking, the way they were talking, because I know I didn't say anything. But my boss decided to shine the spotlight and asked me, was I okay? And I decided to go for broke. And I said, no. I said, why not? All these people kind of, you know, why not? And it turns out that when I started off, I said, well, you're not going to launch in 3 weeks. Of course, we're going to launch in 3 weeks. We've told all the retailers we'll be there for 3 weeks. We'll be there for 3 weeks. You won't. And I'll tell you why you won't. And I went through a whole list, the entire process from design through to packaging, through to dispatch, the whole shoot and match, and explained to them why they would not be launching in 3 weeks. And there was this stunned silence. And then somebody said, almost timidly, said, so when will we launch? And I said, the earliest you'll launch is 12 weeks. I said, the best we can do is we can get some of the, while they're producing some of the packaging, we can get the production plate, the print plates produced at the same time. That's the only thing we can run in tandem. Other than that, you are tied to the duration it takes to make the process, to complete the process, the whole thing, lock, stock, and barrel. When do we launch? 12 weeks. They were prepared to go at 3 weeks. They were talking about going in 3 weeks. And in 3 weeks, they would have had to go back to the retailers and say, sorry, we're not going to make the deadline. And in 4 weeks, they'd have had to do it. And they'd have had to repeat that process 9 times before they actually got on the shelf, which is a lot of embarrassment. It's potentially a lot of money because we were dealing with the retail industry, and some of the retail industry likes the idea of putting in penalties for loss of sale if they've expected a product on the shelf by a certain date. Getting the time wrong can be a major problem in a project. We expect it, and you see it time and again in processes, big construction projects, right down to product launches like that one. If we get the time wrong, our project can fall apart on us. And that creates a lot of problems. If we move to the second one, scope, underestimating what needs to be done. the amount of work or what the deliverables are, not being clear about what we're trying to do. As I've said, the hardest question I can ask somebody is, what do you want? It's the same project and process in a project in an organization. Somebody needs to sit down at the start of a project and say, okay, guys, what are we trying to achieve here? What's the outcome? How do we know we're finished? And if we don't know the finish line, how do we know when to stop? If you're out running, you come to a line. Sometimes they put a ribbon across the line. So you know when you come through the tape, you have finished. If you outrun a marathon or a mini marathon, they have the big finish line with the mark on the ground, and they have the hoarding around and the banners and whatever. You run under it, your big clock, and that's your time. That's your project is finished. You've completed. There is a defined end point. We know we've done the job. So if we don't understand how much is involved, how much work is involved, the time can be thrown out. It also can confuse. It also can turn people off engagement with the project, because if every time they look at it, there's another can of worms after being opened, and people get tired of it very fast and they get distracted. Equally, if it's going on, dragging on for too long because the scope of the project has been set too big, again, I've experienced this, people drift away. I was on a project at one point, started off, we were all moved from our jobs. We met in a boardroom we were told to be in the boardroom at 2 o'clock one day. We went into the boardroom, we were told, okay, from now on, you're on this project. And move out of your office, and you're moving into this other project room, which is a large double-sized room with a big boardroom table type of thing in the middle, and room all around the room for us to have our computers, and, well laid out. And there must have been 12 of us on the project, spread around the room, all doing different things. And as the project went on, and on, and on, and on, and direction became more vague, and the plan seemed to lacked bad management, to be honest with you, bad project management, and that's a whole other story. What I found was 12 people in the room every day became 9 people in the room, with one person popping in every now and then. Became 6 people in the room. And at one point, there was just myself and one other person in the room. Just ran out of steam. The project ran out of steam. Project didn't get completed because the scope was too vague. People didn't know what they were supposed to do. No direction on it. The timing wasn't set. And people just felt after a while, I can go back into my own job, and I'll come back to it when they shout for me, I'll come back. I remember, if memory serves me right, you had people kind of coming to me saying, look, if anyone comes in looking for me, I'm in my office, tell them to come and give me a shout, because, I can do more in my office rather than sitting here. And it was that complete breakdown because they didn't know, we didn't have the scope. Even the project manager disappeared. He used to turn up for the project 4 hours a day. He came in at 10, he was gone at 2. There was no, we didn't know what was going, we didn't know what we were doing, what we were there for. The third constraint is cost. How much will the project cost? There's a number of famous projects running at the moment, like the Children's Hospital, which was valued at $500,000 or something, and it turns out to be so many billion. We constantly hear of projects that come in over budget. Don't hear an awful lot of them coming in on time and under budget. There's a few of them, but not a lot. I think the M7 upgrade that they did, that came in a little bit ahead of time, and I think it was either just on budget or slightly below budget. But most projects, or not most, but there are a lot of projects that run out of control. The combination of the three of these feeds each other. The longer it's going to take time-wise, the higher the cost. The more uncertain the scope, the longer the time it'll take, the higher the cost. If we don't get the costing right and we don't control it, then we don't have control on the scope. We don't have control on the length of time. These three areas are the three things that we cannot lose sight of. And this is what a project manager is supposed to manage. The interplay of the three of these, and that starts at the very beginning, at the setting of the project. It starts before the project even begins. It's before the team is even selected. It starts with a project manager sitting down with a client, working out, okay, what is you trying to do? When do you want it done by? How much are you putting into this? How much is available for this? What's the budget? And what are the contingencies? What happens if something goes wrong? Something unexpected happens. What happens if we find something in the process of this project that we're not currently aware of? It's a blind spot to us at the moment. It's making sure we have all the details. A professional project manager will not accept a task, will not accept a project if they don't have these three areas covered. Because they're not going to hang themselves out to dry. They're going to make sure that they have all this information, that they have these tied down very tightly. Because, well, there we go. A project is a complex arena. You have stakeholders, you have people involved in the project, people who have some connection to the project. They don't have to be the participants. A stakeholder can be somebody who's affected by it. A stakeholder is anybody who has any connection with the project. You know, if you're getting a building work done, well, neighbors are stakeholders. Even though you're not building for them, you're doing something for yourself. They're still stakeholders. They still have a part to play in this. They are involved in this. Noise interruption, access, changing, light, whatever. Managing that engagement is an important aspect. These are the roles project manager are going to have. Also, there's a budget. Things have to be bought for a project. Equipment, materials, people. And the biggest ones we have to work out is risk. What happens when things go wrong? What is the plan? Part of the time, the scope, and the costings, we also include risk. The plan B. If we don't have a plan B, then the first hurdle we hit, we will grind to a halt. The better prepared we are, the better the project will run. We also have communications. Projects can fail because of communications. We don't, it can be quite funny actually, because projects can sometimes become very insular. And the team gets together in the project, almost like a virtual huddle. And they don't want to share information outside the project group. They don't want people outside knowing what's going on because it's all secret. Now, in some cases, we have highly sensitive things that we're working on and we can't, they're not for public release, they're not for wider circulation. We still have communications involved. We have suppliers, we have potential clients, We have other people we need to engage with. So we need to know who we need to be communicating with, how, when, where. We can't just ignore it and keep it insular, because it's not. Projects are integrated. They're integrative. They are involving a number of people, cross-functional. A project team that's not, I will talk about this again in a few weeks' time. A project team that's not cross-functional is not a project team, because everybody brings an expertise to the table. It opens up a whole other situation, but it is something that that has to be managed. That's what project management is for. You're not just managing the delivery of something, you're managing the integration, the cross-functionality, the use of different skills, the use of different people. You're bringing them all into the same process, into the same fold to make it work. There's other things there. I'm not going to go through them all. We've talked about the scope, the schedule, the time, the cost. There's also the quality. What is acceptable? I've seen and heard projects that actually suffered because the expectation of the quality of the output was set too high. I actually know somebody who launched a number of years ago, launched an app, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars developing this app. And I was at a conference and she came along to launch the app, and we all got a copy of it to try it out and to give feedback on it. And instantly, the word around the room was, oh, did anybody see this? Did anybody notice that? There were issues spotted all over the place. And it was basically, she spent a fortune and held up launching until the project was perfect instead of good enough. Quality is something we need to, what is acceptable? And there is only one person can decide on what is acceptable quality in an entire project process. And that's the client. They're the only people who can decide, yes, that we will accept it if it can do that. If it looks like that, we will accept that. The project team can't decide that. The project manager can't decide that. Management can't decide that unless they're the client. It's the actual client, the actual person who's going to be using it, the actual person for whom the project has been completed. They're the client. It's the same with anything else. The customer determines the value and the quality of a product or a service. Project management is no different. Now, we have two main types of project management. Thankfully, over the years, I've done both. Very briefly, we have what's known as an agile and a waterfall system. Waterfall, the example of the waterfall would be, if anybody's ever heard of it, Prince 2. It's a very structured, very, it's very focused on the scope of the project. The scope is fixed. That's it. There is some variation allowed on things like time and cost, but the scope, you can't move what the project is about. Once the scope is set, that's it. The focus, I'm not going to go through everything on this table, but as a comparative here, the focus is on the process. You manage it using plans. There's longer iterations of the process. Customers involved right at the beginning and at the end. There's minimal feedback. It's quite hierarchical and directing. Leadership is very directing. A lot of documentation. Everything is written, everything is noted, everything is recovered. I actually found, to be honest with you, I found waterfall project management quite laborious, quite intense. And a number of years ago, I came across Agile. project management. You can see straight away that the time and the cost become fixed. It reverses to the waterfall, and the scope becomes variable, because agile means exactly what it says: agility, flexibility, ability to move, to adapt. So the focus is on the people doing the project. And it's incremental. If you look at Kotter's model of change management, he has an 8-step process in change management. He doesn't just decide, make a change, there you go, we're doing it. There are 8 steps to walk through how you make the change. And the steps involve getting people on board, planning what you're trying to do, the baby steps. As I said, at the start, we start with the end. What do you want? What does after we complete this project, what will the world look like? What will our business look like? What will our department look like? And then, okay, so now we know what it looks like. How are we going to get there? Because we're here, that's over there. If we take one big step at it, well, fine, we might get there, but it's going to need an awful lot more control to get that discipline to make it in one big step. Or we can take smaller steps. And that will help us align with anything that's going along, deal with any potholes we find along the way, rather than get to the end and realize we've kind of glossed over a number of issues and now we've got to go back and redo it. The agile is the incremental approach. There's frequent feedback. The customer, the client is involved all the time. It's a much more user-friendly system. It's essentially a big project achieved through the completion of a lot of mini projects. They all together, they lead to the big end, the big completion. It allows people to see that we can see progress. We can measure progress. In business, there's a mantra: what gets measured gets done. So it allows management to measure progress and see that things are moving in the right direction. It encourages things to move faster because agility is there. It implies a bit of speed. It implies you getting through things quicker. There's another benefit of something like an agile versus waterfall. And I'm not trying to put down waterfall. There are situations where the waterfall project management would come in very useful. But where the agile trumps it a little bit is because we're doing these small steps, we can reward at stages along the way. We can do various stage gates. We can get involvement from the customer a lot more. We have better control on things as we're moving along. If a change comes along, it can be brought into the system. We can stop and we can review it and we can see what impact that's going to have and what change needs to happen, rather than destabilizing the whole thing. It involves people only being involved in getting into the project for when they're needed in the project. So it's not putting 12 people in a room and telling them, there's your project, now go make it happen. It's, well, I only need that person's expertise for the next 3 or 4 weeks. And after that, they're free to return to their own job and their own role and go back to whatever they were doing. So when a person's committing to being involved in a project, they're only involved in this for a period of time, a short period of time, just for that section. And that's where we bring this concept of the Scrum project management into the system. Scrum is an agile project management system. Developed originally, if I remember rightly, for the IT sector. But it is very adaptive to what's going on. And it works in the way it works is brilliant in that you start with the, as I said earlier on, you start with the end in mind. What is the end game? What's the finished product going to look, the finished service going to look like? What does the end of this project look like? Then we break it down and, okay, so in order for that to happen, what's the first thing we need to do? Who needs to be involved in that first thing? The only two constants in a Scrum project management system is the project manager and the client. The rest of the project team come in or go out as needed through the process. Now, the process is made up of what's called sprints. Each sprint is the same length, maybe anything from 2 to 4 weeks generally. All the sprints are the same length. So you know if you're being involved, if you're going to be involved in the project, it's 4 weeks. And in 4 weeks' time, that sprint is finished. That sprint ends. And you are no longer, you may be back again in 2 months' time or 3 months' time. But for that interim period, you go back to your day work. You are no longer required on the projects. You're not sitting in a room on a project team waiting for somebody else to do something, kind of looking at the four walls, waiting for something to happen. You can go back and do whatever you want to do. So you can go back and engage with what else is going on, and you come back into the project that you need. If something goes wrong, at the end of every sprint, there's a review session, which basically says, are we on track? Project meetings, and I've always loved the mantra that a meeting is a place where minutes are kept and hours are wasted. Scrum meetings, these agile meetings take 10 minutes. Stand-up meetings, and they're 10 minutes or less. Literally the project team, because it's a small, tight-knit project team designed to achieve a specific part of the process. So there's only a handful of people there. The project manager is there to coordinate it. Okay, how are we getting on? Are we on track? Is everybody doing okay? Any issues? Anything we should know about? Anything I need to tell the client about? Everything going fine? Great, talk to you tomorrow. Meeting over, move on. In this program, because I'm a global training partner with a company called VM Edu, which is a global organization that trains various aspects of Scrum project management, I have access to a certification program called Scrum Fundamentals Certified, SFC. It is a formal, recognized certification. It is essentially Scrum Project Management Light. In previous runnings of this module, and as in classes I run in ITCAR or SETU, I have to get those in, then at SETU and in other colleges that I lecture in, I let people take this process if they want to do it. It's an online program. It's done outside of this module. You do it yourself. I've seen people do it in about 40 minutes. It's a couple of videos. You answer questions. It's multiple choice questions. You get a certain percentage and you pass, and you download a cert. The cert is Scrum Fundamental Certified. It's a formal Scrum project management certification, which people use on their CVs and whatever. It's available to you if you wish. There is no cost in it. You just need to send CERDAS your email address that you're happy to use, and they will send that to me, and you will then get a link from Scrum Study, which will give you 30 days to go in and complete this basic project management certification. If you wish, it's not compulsory. If you don't want to do it, that's fine too. What I would say is, in the next week, if you could send CERDAS your email address that you want to be used, that you're happy to be used, because some people don't like using their company addresses, is that, the company system won't allow links to come through. I will get the addresses, I will get the details from CERDAS in the coming week, and I will set up an invitation to people, and you will then receive, I think you receive 2 emails officially from me, but it's a Scrum study would be the heading on it, for you to go and complete your Scrum fundamentals. It's a light version of the program. It's not a full Scrum certification. That's a separate situation. That doesn't come cheap. That doesn't come free. So we say, but if people are interested, there's a great way of getting a foothold on actual project management skill. It's a lovely little basic program. There's a piece just going to put here to wrap up. There's I get this to move. There we go. There's just what the Scrum projects, what the benefits are. Just took that off the Scrum website. As a project management situation, gives you an idea of the type of things that people can do in this sort of project management scope. Okay, it is coming up to 10 to 1. I said I would take about 50 minutes. So are there any questions? Is there anything coming out of the chat box?
You can unmute if they'd like to ask, or put them in the chat box. There's nothing there at the minute, just to say, in case people can't see it, our email address is there, insurance.cw@setu.ie. So any queries at all, you can email us, or likewise, as Denis mentioned, if you'd like to sign up for the Scrum Light Fundamentals, you can let us know, and we'll forward on all the interested people onto Denis. We'll deal with it from there. So
hi Denis, sorry, just one question just in relation to the Scrum. Is recognized as the Prince? So if you've got the Scrum qualification, let's say the full one, not the light one, would it be as recognized as the same kind of level as Prince?
Yes, it would be. It'd be one of the, you got your PMI, you got your Prince, and you got your Scrum, are kind of 3 big players out there. So definitely, yeah.
Okay, and just for because I've taken the Prince before, and just the way the Prince is currently, well, the exam anyway, is structured, it doesn't really benefit anybody like myself who suffer from dyslexia. Is the Scrum like this as well?
The Scrum is a series of multiple choice questions. It's an online exam. Now the Scrum fundamentals one, you can take it as often as you like to essentially get the answer you want, get the result you want. This full Scrum does there is a required pass rate, and it's a one hit. It's a proctored exam, but it's yeah, it's. I found that I did the Prince 2, both Prince 2s, the foundation and the full course after, and I found them extremely heavy going, very stressful, I found it very difficult to do. I found the Scrum, when I was doing it, a much more user-friendly process.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
No problem. What I'd suggest is take a shot at the light one, the fundamentals one, and see what you think of it. And you know, I've had a few people come back to me over time after asking about making inquiries about doing the other one. But let's start with the easy free one, and then you can judge from there as to whether you want to go further or not. Okay. Any other question?
Anything in the chat? Just a few queries about YouTube and that. So
Nicola, that's not going to be a problem. If I just see a chat here from Nicola saying that she's going to miss the next 2, they'll be recorded and they'll be available on the YouTube channel, so that's fine.
all 4 of them will be up there anyway, so people who maybe weren't able to view, or you can share with your colleagues. So it's all freely available there. So yeah, so if there's nothing else,
okay,
I think today we're saying it's a new Friday, so maybe people want to get off early. So thanks everyone for joining us.
Lucky them.
Lucky them, it's right. So look, thanks everyone, and have a lovely long weekend and some shamrock shakes tomorrow. I know we're looking forward to having some here, so, and we'll see you all next week.
Take care, folks. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Denis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.